So I've seen a lot of people do videos like this, and I finally feel like it's time to do a red pagan version of it. So here we go. My cities for MLB relocation or expansion. Now there are a few cities already vying for a team, and there are some viable markets. Obviously, before that can happen, Oakland and Tampa Bay really need to figure out their situation first. Oakland currently is in negotiations and looking like they are inevitably going to follow the Raiders to Vegas. They just signed the deal with Bally's to tear down the old Tropicana Hotel on the Strip and build a multi-billion-dollar stadium on the same dirt. This isn't this. There are some talks that I found out about the A's potentially building a new hotel next to it and overlooking the ballpark. So that's kind of sweet. That's kind of a cool idea. It would be right across the street from the Excalibur and in the same vicinity as the MGM in New York, New York. It would be right around the corner from Allegiant Stadium and T-Mobile Arena. So all three professional sports would literally be within walking distance of your Strip hotel. Obviously, Tampa is in negotiations with the city of St. Petersburg to build a new stadium, but there have been a few hiccups on that, but I feel like that is probably still going to happen. If not, then that's going to lead me into the topic of today's video. And the first city on that list is going to be Nashville, Tennessee, which gets brought up a lot especially in relation to the Tampa Bay Rays and their situation. As I said, Tampa is likely going to stay put in South Florida, but if they don't, then there's a real possibility that they will most likely move to Nashville. At one point, they were discussing a two-city shared deal plan or whatever to play several home games up in Montreal, and that just seemed to me that seems to be a memory at this point. And thank goddess for that, because that idea, in my opinion, was just so fucking stupid. I don't know whose coke-fueled fantasy drummed that one up, but yeah, Nashville likely would be a site for relocation if the if the Rays decide to move. Obviously, they'd want to change the name to something more representative of the city. So there are a lot of talks that if a team comes to Nashville, relocation or expansion, they would likely name the team either the Stars or the Sound. The AAA team, Nashville Sound, already plays in the northern downtown area, and they are pretty successful. They draw good crowds to the games. There's a whole lot of support up there in Nashville. You've also got the Predators, who play in the National Hockey League, the Titans, who play in the NFL. They don't have an NBA team, but Tennessee does have the Memphis Grizzlies, and that's only a few hours away. So they also have an MLS team, Nashville FC, and they just got a brand new stadium built there. So I think that the MLB would do good to have a team there, even if it is an expansion team. It's also a tourist town because of the whole country music scene. It's also famous for being a premier comedy destination for a lot of people. I mean, for instance, you just got Zany's Comedy Club that's like right about 8 minutes south of downtown. They have some killer beer, some tasty wings. If you like them spicy, you're going to love setting your mouth on fire to that. Man, this is turning into an advertisement. Zanies should really pay me for this shit. But if a team does come to Nashville, would they keep the minor league team just like the A's are planning to do with Vegas, with the Aviators? Or would they move the minor league team to another city, maybe somewhere else within Tennessee or the surrounding area, and just renovate and expand the stadium that they're currently playing in? Or would they just build an entirely brand new stadium from scratch? I don't really see the point in doing that. Like, literally, that new stadium they just built, I think, just a few years ago, within the last 10 years or so. It's brand new. You could just really just expand it and maybe build onto it, honestly. I know there are some renderings of what the MLB stadium would look like, and they are pretty sweet. So, it's right across the river from Nissan Stadium. it's right on the river of next to Nissan Stadium, which the Titans have said that they are planning on building a new one themselves, though they've also considered possibly building one, across the river in downtown. But who knows? Maybe if they do two new stadiums, maybe they could share an entertainment district or a stadium project design where it's like the Nashville baseball team pitches in half of their share, the Titans pitch in half of their share, and if they need public funding, then they get some of that. But I think if you have two teams, that would really make the cost a lot better, because then that would mean that the teams are a little bit more willing to negotiate a plan like that if they know that they could maybe privately fund it themselves. That's just unfortunately not really how things work these days, though, so there'd probably still have to be some public funding for that. And keep in mind, a project like that, especially for two stadiums, would probably easily cost about, several $billions, possibly up to $5 billion, could even top $5 billion. It could actually be more expensive than SoFi. So, there is that. Also, if you are going to want some of those entertainment and social spaces at the stadium like that, you definitely want to go for that. Because it's Nashville, and I feel like, the capital of country music, it needs something like that. But if they do kick the minor league team out, say the Rays move there, maybe the minor league team could actually just go to Tampa, and maybe keep the Rays name, and the Rays could take the Sounds or the Stars, that'd be an interesting idea. But yeah, that's all I really got to say about that one. The next city we're going to look at is indeed the town that I live in, Portland, Oregon, and I personally am a fan of this. I support this. I think Portland has a viable market for it. That might be a personal bias, just because I do love this city and this, and the idea of having a team here. They have the Trailblazers of the NBA. They have the Timbers of the MLS. They have a semi-professional Western Hockey League team that's called the Winterhawks. They do well. They attract a loyal following of people. They actually did a study right around the time of the pandemic, and around half, if not more, people had said that they would support a team in Portland and would come to see the games. And I think in a city like Portland, you'd want to keep the capacity smaller, around like maybe 30 to 35K, maybe expandable to 35K, maybe 40K, but that might be pushing it for standing room. You definitely would want to have social spaces like, like an on-site microbrewery, because Portland has more microbreweries per capita than any other place in the country. They're big on IPA and hard cider here. Pelican Bay Brewing is over in Lincoln City. Deschutes Brewing is over in Bend. You've got that. Those are big Oregon brands. They could those teams could even sponsor. Those brands could even sponsor the team. Portland Cider Company and Cascadia Brewing are local in Portland, so they could sponsor. Rainier Beer could possibly sponsor. They're another popular thing up here in the Pacific Northwest. We also have Aviation Gin that's just like right up the road, and I think Ryan Reynolds or somebody. I know there was some celebrity that like is a spokesperson for like that gin. I don't know if it was Ryan Reynolds, Ryan Gosling. It was some celebrity. So yeah, they could easily, and that. But either way, Aviation Gin is like right up the road from one of the proposed sites that they have. So they could literally have like, a nice little setup at the stadium. They could sponsor Pendleton Whiskey, which is obviously located out in Eastern Oregon, Central Eastern Oregon, in Pendleton. They could sponsor and have a little bar area around. And I don't think it would fly, but I would love to see like Nectar or Cannabis Nation or Khalifa or Green Planet or some pot dispensary on site, at least, or at bare minimum, at least have them sponsor the team. Portland has a lot of pot shops here. There's literally like one on almost every freaking corner. It's like Starbucks here, but without the actual coffee. If you want coffee, that's where you actually have to go to an actual coffee shop, which we got plenty of here too. In fact, I'm honestly surprised that they don't have a pot slash coffee shop like what almost like the Taco Bell KFC thing. Like I'm in the pot shop. I'm in the Stumptown Coffee Roasters. I'm in the combination pot shop and Stumptown Coffee Roasters. Anyway, um, that would be funny. That would be funny to see at a stadium, honestly.
Ah, man. That's some heavy shit, man.
And sometimes you literally even have pot shops, coffee shops, and then like some sort of like food cart or restaurant that's like predominantly like Mexican food. So, and those are the people that know their clientele real well. Um, but, uh, yeah, a lot of coffee chains that are up here. Of course, you'd have to have Stumptown Coffee Roasters. You'd have to have Dutch Brothers because you'd have to have one or both of those at the damn stadium. Or somewhere around it because there's just no getting around that. You at least don't have a Dutch Brothers in this town, then that would be sacrilegious to Oregonians. Most Portlanders, are going to want a nice cup of coffee, especially if they're going to be sitting through 3-4 hour games, and then some people are going to definitely want the beer, the alcohol and stuff like that. Like I said, you could put that there. People are, and while you may not necessarily, while I don't think it would fly at a stadium, to smoke pot on site, I think it would be kind of funny to still have a pot, like sponsor, like a pot dispensary sponsor. That would be kind of funny. Just very intuitive, very representative of Portland. But yeah, you'd get a lot of alcohol, coffee, pot sponsorships, which alone could easily pay for a lot of things. But either way, you're going to want social spaces. That's just becoming a thing now. And Portland is also somewhat of a college town. You got Portland State that's right downtown. You got Mount Hood over in Gresham. You got Clackamas Community College. You got Portland community colleges that are spread out all throughout this damn city. Portland is also full of just young people. It's a very young people town, a very progressive town politically. So yeah, it's got such a rich party lifestyle in a lot of places, and just I've literally been here for 5 years, and I've still have not completely explored everything. I could spend the rest of my life here and still not completely do all that. But yeah, you're definitely gonna want those social spaces so that people can meet new people and just have a unique and wonderful experience. We have a shit ton of great food. Honestly, some of the best food you're going to get is at the food carts, and we have a shit ton of those. In fact, if you're going to you're going to want to just make a lot of your food options at the ballpark predominantly just food carts, and that actually might be a pretty good idea because that's going to save you a ton of money because you won't have to rent out or lease out these brick and mortar spaces, which is going to free up a lot more space for at the stadium for like your social spaces like bars and your team merch stores. If you've ever been to Cartlandia in Southeast Portland or Pioneer Square in downtown, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say that from a space-saving perspective, you can rotate your vendors more easily than you could with a brick-and-mortar store. That would save you time. That's going to save you money, and the food and the experiences are just way better with food carts, in my opinion. Yeah, no, I know that for some cities and some stadiums that couldn't really work, but Portland, we're just built kind of different. I mean, hell, one of the common things that you'll hear people saying, you'll see stickers on cars even that literally say "Keep Portland Weird," and that's kind of, to some people, they don't like that, especially with the whole Portlandia thing, which some people have had issue with because they think it portrays Portland in a negative light. I don't know about that. I don't have a right to speak on that. I'm originally from California, and there's some issues on that itself that comes with it, because Oregonians, especially Portlanders, they have a certain kind of feeling about outsiders, particularly Californians. I understand. I've lived here 5 years at this point, and as a Californian born and raised, I totally get it. Please just come and visit. Don't stay. Um, um, but yeah, like I said, there are renderings to build a stadium in the old Northwest Industrial District, right off of Highway 30, actually on Front Avenue in Northwest 26th. Cannot talk today. There is an old Terminal 2 out there in the Port of Portland, where this is at, and that's where they're planning on putting this. The plans have already been approved a couple of years ago by the Portland City Council. It's basically at this point the plans are sitting on a shelf ready to go. It just needs the MLB to basically say, "Yep, go for it." Whatever. My biggest problem with that is going to be the traffic and the lack of public transportation. Currently, the only public transport that goes out there is Line 16, which would pull up right in front of the stadium site, but the road is only like 2 lanes, I think it's, or maybe it's 3 lanes, I don't remember, but I know it's not very big. You're going to get a lot more traffic through there. That keep in mind, there's a lot of industrial businesses there, and so they've got a lot of industrial workers, and that's going to make things a little bit tenuous, especially if you're running late to work. So that might come into a little bit of an issue with the local businesses and some of the workers there. There's also the other thing that's kind of an issue is that there's no train or streetcar that pulls up there. The nearest one is literally in downtown. And that would mean that, you'd again have to have a lot of people having to like bus it up or take scooters or something like that. Maybe you could ferry people up the river, though. Maybe you could just ferry people up the river, especially if they get off in downtown, and then you could do that. Kind of like how the San Francisco Giants do, like in Larkspur, Tiburon, Sausalito area, and Vallejo. Maybe you could, do like a riverboat thing. Have a riverboat theme. Have a riverboat just ferry people up the river, and then pull up right in front of the stadium outside of the outfield fences. That would be really sweet. I kind of like that idea. But yeah, otherwise the bus is going to be cramped with people. The people are going to have to walk. They're going to have to bike, skate, scoot, whatever. Like I said, I just don't see that. I just see a few issues with that. Not that it's not like they couldn't invest in some infrastructure there to fix that. Maybe they could, maybe they'd need to put in a streetcar or train line to get there. But again, those are just a few of the issues I have with that. But yeah, Portland is just a very pedestrian city, so you are going to want to upgrade the infrastructure for that. Another rendering I have seen on that is, that has been considered, is over in the Rockwell neighborhood in Northeast Portland. Now, my only issue with that one is that Rockwood is not really that good of a neighborhood. It's got a few problems. I think another issue is that it would further gentrify the neighborhood and the city, and that would come under a lot of fire from a lot of different groups, a lot of especially like Black Lives Matter and tenants' rights groups and stuff like that. Certainly that would end up causing some friction in that regard. Not only that, that's not really an official proposal that has been approved by anybody. It's just an idea, it's just a rendering. No one's really actually made a serious attempt to actually get approval for that. But it's at least another option in case the Northwest Portland site does not come to fruition. But first of all, you got to be able to just get a team there before that can even happen. So yeah, Portland's also a city with a lot of protests. Whenever someone just breathes in a way that comes off as discriminatory, it was a hotbed during the 2020 George Floyd protests. Yeah, the area would be good for transportation, as the MAX, or Metro Area Express, the light rail, runs right by there. Lots of bus lines go there. It's so that's really the only good thing about that particular site. I think Portland could definitely get a team. Maybe not the first choice compared to Nashville, but compared to other cities on this list that I'll talk about, I think it stands a pretty good chance. The Depressed Ginger actually did a couple of videos on this. He would definitely disagree with me on that, because he, like many other people, have this common misconception that Portland is just like a den of scum and villainy. That it's just an anarchic cesspit of crime. I disagree with that. I think that the media blows that way out of proportion. Portland is really no different than any other city like Seattle, SF, New York, LA. Every place is going to have its problems. Portland is pretty minuscule on that level. Like, yeah, there's some crime, yeah, there's some homeless problems, but again, you're going to get that anywhere you go in a major city, in bigger cities. So, I don't really see how that's necessarily an issue, because, like I said, they house sports teams there. They have football teams there, and I don't see Portland getting a football team, but I could definitely see them getting an MLB team. So that's the one. Yeah. I also have lived in a town in California, during the first 20 something years of my life, and it was only a sixth the population of Portland, and its crime and drug problems were far worse than what I've seen here. Portland has a population of around, roughly about 650,000 people. The metro itself is well over 1 million, so it could easily sustain a team here. Detroit has about the same population now, and its metro is roughly about the same size. So, again, they have sports teams there. Oregon itself has a population of about 5 million people. People have said that they'd come from Salem, Eugene, the Oregon coast, Bend. They'd come from hours away just to catch a game. Not only that, your alternative right now is basically to go to Seattle, and that's easily 3-4 hours, depending on traffic, just from Portland. And then you're talking about from Eugene, Bend, the Oregon coast, that's easily another couple hours there. People don't want to trek that far. And then, it's, practically a 9 to 12 hour trek, just to get down to San Francisco. And if you take the coast highway, well, you're looking easily about 12 to 14 hours on the road. So, point being is that Portland would at least cut down on a lot of travel. It would make things easier for people that don't have easiest of access to go see a ball game, who would probably love to see a ball game, but whose only choices right now are San Francisco and Seattle, and those are too far away for a lot of people. So yeah, it would also be really good for travel for the Mariners. It would give a nice little Pacific Northwest rivalry between the two cities. Plus, there are several minor league teams that are already in the area. You've got the Single A team of the Diamondbacks, the Hillsboro Hops, that play on the western side of the metro. The Giants have a Single A team, the Eugene Emeralds, that play just a couple hours to the south. There's also the West Coast League, which is not which is technically not affiliated with the MLB in a minor league sense, but they did actually just sign a deal with the MLB this past year to kind of help develop talent for the minors. Yeah, we actually we have a lot of talent that are in that. You've got that league actually plays host to teams like the Bend Elks. You have the Corvallis Knights. You have the Cowlitz Black Bears, the Ridgefield Raptors, the Wenatchee Apple Sox, the Yakima Valley Pippins. Yep, we have a team in that league here in Portland called the Portland Pickles.
I'm a pickle. I'm Pickle Rick.
Their mascot's called Dylan. Look it up. He actually got stolen and then was recovered and dropped back off last year. There was like a whole thing in the news about that. So that was kind of funny. The Portland Pickles also have a farm team called the Gherkins, because yeah, and people think that that's a stupid name, and I'm like, yeah, well, it was actually voted on by public vote. So again, Portland, we're just built different. We are just kind of a weird city, and we are very much built different. So, and then there also used to be a team, well, there still is a team, actually, in Salem-Keizer called the Volcanoes, and they actually used to be the low-A affiliate of the Giants before that became the Eugene Emeralds. But the Volcanoes are still around. I believe they play in what's called the Maverick League or something like that. Yeah, maybe there's a potential for Portland to take on the old Volcanoes team as a minor league affiliate. Maybe they take on one of the West Coast League teams. Maybe they take Eugene and or Hillsboro. Maybe if a team comes to Portland, they're going to need an awesome, But if a team comes to Portland, they're going to need an awesome name. And I know that the Portland Diamond Project is the one spearheading a lot of efforts to bring the MLB to PDX. So maybe the team goes with the Diamonds. Maybe they go with the Cascades. Colorado's got the Rockies. The Mariners AAA squad, Tacoma, they're called the Rainiers. Maybe Portland has the Cascades. The Cascade Mountain Ranges is Cascadia. I also think a stupid yet cute name that they could probably go with is like the Green Sox or Apple Sox, because Cascadia is known for its lush evergreen forests, its Douglas firs. It's also, there's a lot of beer making that goes on up here, particularly its apples, its cider. So either the Green Sox, the Apple Sox would be kind of cool and kind of funny, and would follow that old classic baseball tradition of naming a team the X Sox, like the Red Sox, the White Sox. I think it would be kind of funny. I also think that like a name like the Volcanoes could work, but I think even less so than the Sox or the Cascades. But Portland, and much of the Pacific Northwest, it's full of volcanoes. Just within a few hours distance, have several potentially high-risk volcanoes. You got Mount Hood, Mount St. Helens, of course, Mount Rainier. You got the Newberry volcano over in Central Oregon. Portland itself was basically built on the boring lava fields with cinder cones like Mount Scott, Mount Tabor, Mount Talbot, Powell Butte, all on the eastern side of town. So that would be a nice little shout out to our lush volcanic history. Of course, regardless of the team name, they'd still need a stadium. I think the stadium would need to have a retractable roof, because it does rain a lot up here. Not as much as Seattle, but it still happens. The last few summers here have been kind of dry, so the weather varies. We also had that heat dome back in 2021 that some of you might have heard about on the news. Caused record heat up here, way up into the 110s. I think we hit like 116 or something where I lived. Holy crap, that was miserable. I think a town in British Columbia set a record of like 122 degrees Fahrenheit, which I don't know the degrees Celsius on that, because I'm an American and I'm not going to go convert that. So if you're not American and you work off of Celsius, then go look it up. But it was insane, and it was brutal, and all of us were miserable. And another thing is, you couldn't even find an AC in the entire tri-state area. A lot of people had to, order those, and they were coming from like Arizona and Nevada and California, particularly SoCal. It was horrible. Roads and highways were cracking. Metal support beams had melted like holes in it. There's actually a picture of one of the streetcar like supports or something like that. It had like a burned metal hole in it, and the support was compromised and it sucked. You had car panels that were melting. It was awful. But then you have those years where the weather is a bit more mild and it's humid and it rains. So during the summers, when it's a bit nicer, you could definitely open the roof. On hotter, rainy days, you could close it. I think, honestly, Portland is like one of the perfect retractable roof cities. Like, it's not like perfect, but it works. I think we could get a lot of use out of a retractable roof while also making use of having it, open. We have a lot of great views of the Cascade Range, a lot of the mountains on like when it's clear as a bell, you could literally see, several different mountains like Mount St. Helens Hood, and Rainier. You can sometimes, I think, see like Mount Bachelor, and a few other mountains to boot. So, it's very beautiful. You also get along with it, you also get the beautiful, that beautiful Portland skyline and the views of the Willamette River. It's just gorgeous on a nice spring or summer day. Anyways, I'm going to move on because I feel like I'm talking way too much about this, and I moved here a few years ago, and like I said, I just fell in love with this city and its landscape, so I know I'm a bit biased on this one. But the next city that we're going to talk about, and the one that gets talked about occasionally, is Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a bit 50-50 on this one, but I do think that Charlotte and its metro area could definitely support a team. It would be great for travel for Atlanta, even more so if Nashville gets a team. I think that a team in Charlotte would also represent the Carolinas as a whole, kind of like how the Panthers and several other teams are. Charlotte already has the Hornets. They have of the NBA. They have the Carolina Panthers of the NFL. They have. They just recently got a team that joined the MLS, and they have the Carolina Hurricanes of the NHL, so I think that they could easily support a team in the MLB. Charlotte gets humid and hot during the summer, so you're definitely going to want to go, so you could go with an open-air stadium like Atlanta did, but I feel like it would probably be better if you had a roof. I kind of feel like most stadiums would, especially in the South, but that's just my personal opinion. Charlotte's also another very lovely city. I think that if they put a team there, they would want a downtown ballpark. I know currently that they have one of the they have the AAA Knights that plays there. I think that they could easily take that team name and stadium, possibly just upgrade it. I don't really see a need for them to build a brand new stadium when that one is literally less than 10 years old. I still think the Knights is a great name. Maybe they go with something else, but I just can't really think of anything that would honestly be any better than that. Not really much else to say about that one. Charlotte's a lovely city. I think it would do well to have a team there. So I don't think they would have a problem attracting one. I just kind of feel that that one's a little bit on the iffy side. But yeah, so the next one that we're going to go with is Salt Lake City, Utah, and this one surprises some people. Now, SLC has actually just recently submitted a bid to be considered by the MLB. It calls for a stadium to be built on the grounds of an old factory near downtown. I love Salt Lake City. I've actually been there. I've stayed there. I actually have a friend that lives there. If it wasn't for the Mormons and the growing environmental problems that they have from the slowly receding lake, I would totally live there. But Salt Lake City is very lovely. It's right at the edge of the Great Western Desert. You got the Rockies that are just towering over the east of town. You have lovely national parks and hiking trails just within a few hours' drive. You've got Zion and the Arches and Monument Valley. Jackson, Wyoming is actually just I think a couple hours to the northeast. Provo is a really lovely town. Honestly, the views alone in Utah are enough to make you just fall in love with it. They have a minor league team there already called the Bees. Brigham Young, is in the area, and both BYU and the Salt Lake Bees both have lovely mountain backdrops to their stadiums just beyond the outfield. So even if the team is just having a crap year, you just don't care because you're getting a great view, you're drinking great beer, you're having a hot dog. You don't give a crap if the team is, to quote Joe Namath, it's like I could care less if the team is struggling. Like that is. Like you really don't give a crap, because you're still enjoying yourself. I mean, who wouldn't with something like that? It's just perfect. Yeah, you're going to get a great view. You're going to get a great experience no matter what. There's never going to be a bad seat in the house. Plus, Utah already has, the Jazz, which I said in the last video, I think is just a stupid name. It worked when they were in New Orleans, but SLC is just not a jazz city. They could have named them the Buzz or something, but they kept the Jazz name. I don't know why. SLC is also a city that I think could viably host an NHL team. They obviously have the Real Salt Lake that plays in the MLS. They have some marginal success, so I think that Salt Lake City could actually, be pretty viable for an MLB team. I think being a desert climate and a winter weather city, it would also make it pretty perfect for baseball and hockey. Summers can get a little hot, but not like inhospitable like it does in Vegas or Phoenix. You get some 100-degree days there, but most of them are largely in the 90s, so I think you could do well with an open-air stadium. Maybe you build one with a retractable roof if you want to, throw a little extra money towards it. But honestly, SLC, I think, has a good weather during the spring and summer. I don't really see why you'd really need one. You wouldn't get much use out of it because, especially during those, like maybe during those hotter days, you could use it, like I mentioned, but I just don't see why you'd need one. You'd get much more use. You wouldn't get much use out of it. Not as much as like you'd get out of like Portland. But like Portland also, I think that you'd want to keep the stadium capacity around 35K, expandable for standing room. You're going to want, again, social spaces because SLC is also a young person town. It's a college town. It's got a great underground scene, from what my buddy tells me, so that you're going to actually get, you're going to want to draw in that crowd. I think that they could easily call the team the Bees or the Buzz. I think I really can't think of anything else that would reasonably be a better name. Salt Lake did a good job naming the team as well. It would be perfect, given that Denver is about, less than a day's drive away. Like maybe, I think it's like, maybe 8 hours, something like that. Don't quote me on that one. Vegas is, just right down the road, right down I-15. A puddle jump flight away, basically. Same with Arizona. It's not too far away. It would make a nice little, 4-team regional rivalry right in that area, so I think that would be sweet. The next one that we're going to look at is going to be a twofer because they both kind of get brought up a lot, and both are so close to each other that I don't really think that both could reasonably get a team, but that is Austin and San Antonio, Texas. Now, I feel that Austin would likely be the better candidate, probably the more likely candidate to get an MLB team. I think that they have the better location, but San Antonio likely has the better market for it. But like I said, they're just a couple hours away from each other, so I don't think it really matters. I think that they do good sharing the market viability with the teams. Like they have the San Antonio Spurs of the NBA. Austin has the MLS team. So I think that if San Antonio were to somehow, land an NFL team, not that I think that it will. I mean, they've been trying for a long time. Initially, that was why they built the Alamo Dome, but that never worked out. And now the Alamo Dome is kind of getting a little old, no one. And people still like it. They come to games, but, they're not, it's kind of getting tired and outdated. So you'd probably have to upgrade that, or you'd have to, completely just build a new stadium.
Um, but if they were to somehow land an NFL team, I think Austin would be a reasonable candidate for an MLB expansion. Even if they never get an NFL team, still think Austin would do better with the MLB there. Austin is also just another lovely city. I've actually heard that people that have moved there from from California or Oregon or Washington who say that Austin is just a really nice city. You know, if you're a young person, it's a great place to start fresh, great place to move to if you're newly married or in a committed relationship. You know, if you want to start a family. It doesn't have a whole lot of crime, which plagues a lot of cities, including San Antonio. It's also a very clean city. The air quality is actually, I think, about one of the best in the state, I've heard. I'm not sure if that's true, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I imagine compared to bigger cities like San Antonio, El Paso, Dallas, Houston, that you're probably going to have less smog, and it's in some cases less of the pollution that you'd get, you know, because of the oil refineries. Just seems like Austin would be good for that, you know, good for air quality. So, and it's also smaller, so you've got kind of that small town vibe, but also still with a lot of the comforts that you'd get from city life without, you know, all the annoyances. It's also a college town. It's got very progressive politics if you're into that, unlike the rest of the state. So, which is why a lot of people from out west like to move there, especially young people. If you're gay and or trans, it's probably one of the few places in Texas that you can actually feel somewhat comfortable in. It's still Texas, so you're probably not going to feel completely comfortable, but you'd probably feel a little bit, you know, more at ease, at least in Austin, because it's kind of like it's this weird little den, you know, all of its own, that just kind of does its own thing, much to the chagrin of the rest of the state. And it's also Texas, so, you know, rent and even home prices are actually going to be cheaper out there. You're only a few hours away from Dallas, San Antonio, and El Paso, or Houston. So if you can commute, so if you need to commute for work, you know, you can do that. There's also a rising tech industry, and Tesla was supposedly moving out there at one point. Not sure if they still are going to. But Texas also doesn't have a state income tax, which is also a draw for some people, especially if you're already on a budget or living paycheck to paycheck. That's really sweet. Now, I think the biggest issue with the MLB in Austin would be the fact that you already have the Rangers in Dallas, and then you have the Astros in Houston. So you could easily get another team in Austin, maybe even San Antonio, but I just don't see the MLB rolling the dice on two teams that close to each other. I think they're looking, but would also be a bit hesitant to even like put another one so close between Dallas and Houston. Like, it's worked for the NBA, so it could work for the MLB. If a team does come to that area, it would likely be put in Austin. I think a downtown ballpark would likely work. I think that would be the best idea anyway. You're definitely going to want social spaces, because again, Austin is a young people city. It's a college town. It's going to be a stone's throw away from San Antonio, which is also a tourist city. You're going to want to go. You're going to want to go with about a 30 to 35K stadium, probably a little closer to the 35K. Expand it maybe to 40K for standing room. You know, maybe even an event space or two. It's Texas, so you're going to definitely want some really good barbecue places there. You're going to want bars, all that crap. As far as a team name, you're close to San Antonio, so you could go with the Alamos, even the Texans maybe. I've heard some say that the Austin Trees would be a name that they would use. I don't know about that one. I know that it's a tree city, but I don't know about that. It's like Portland's also a tree city, but I don't know about... Well, honestly, maybe even with Portland. Portland trees would probably do better up here than it would in Austin. But I don't know. I just don't see it. I don't know. Maybe the Austin Senators. That would actually be nice. That would also be a good throwback to the old, like, Washington Senators, who ironically actually moved Arlington to become the Texas Rangers, so it could work. Maybe the Austin Capitals with an AL or OL. Hell, if the Nashville team were to actually go with the sound, maybe Austin could be the Stars. I mean, they already have the Stars hockey team in Dallas. Austin is the capital of Texas. It's the Lone Star State. So, the Capitals, the Senators, the Stars, any of those would work. There's also been a few old minor league teams out in like Hollywood and Los Angeles that were called the Stars, which would be a nice little throwback as well. So the possibilities really are endless on the name. But even the Austin Bulls, maybe, because Texas is also known for its cattle ranching, the meat industry down there, the Texas barbecue, of course. It is Texas, though, so any stadium that you do put down there, it's gonna need a roof on it. The summers are just brutal. The Texas heat is brutal. I have a friend of mine who's originally from Houston, and she and any other Texans will tell you,
the sun sucks.
Maybe you go retractable. Maybe you go with a fixed roof with some skylights to let in natural light and still give you some views. Maybe do what they did for SoFi and down in Los Angeles and to still let in some light natural airflow, but still keep a fixed roof on it. But either way, that's gonna do it for that one. You're definitely gonna need a roof though in Austin, Texas, any part of Texas. You just need it. The next one we're gonna look at is Montreal, Quebec. Now, this one gets brought up a lot, I think, due to nostalgia reasons, and particularly when it comes to the Tampa Bay Rays situation. Obviously, Montreal had the Expos until they moved to DC and became the Washington Nationals. They have an MLS team there. They have the Canadiens of the NHL. They have the Alouettes of the Canadian Football League. But just like how they're just not that. I just don't see them being a viable market for like basketball. I don't see them being a viable market for baseball. I feel like Montreal could have a team there, but I think that they would easily peter out after a while. Like maybe if the team had some success, they could do all right, but I think that a lot of Canada is more just for Toronto. The Blue Jays are kind of like known as Canada's team. They're kind of like Canada's equivalent to like the Yankees or the Red Sox and maybe even the Giants and Dodgers to a lesser extent. But yeah, I don't see it. If they do put a team in Montreal, maybe they go with the old Expos name, maybe they go with something else. Obviously, you'd need a massive renovation to Olympic Stadium. Actually, no, I wouldn't even say that. I think that they just need to tear that place down and build a brand new state-of-the-art stadium with modern amenities just on the same dirt. Olympic Stadium, it's so old, it's an eyesore. The roof design didn't go well, it didn't work, and they have tried numerous efforts over the years, over the decades to fix it. None of them have worked. They're currently trying to put a new roof on top of it now, and it's just a money pit. To be honest, I feel like Montreal is kind of like the Oakland of Canada. They just cannot keep a team. Their stadium is a rotting old dump. The city isn't the best when it comes to crime and drugs. And I think as far as an MLB city goes, it's just subpar. Even for an NBA team, it would be subpar. That's why I don't even think the NBA is even considered or even wants to touch it. Compared to like up and coming cities like Austin, Salt Lake City, and Vegas and Charlotte, even Portland for some of its problems is better than Montreal. Good God. I think Montreal only wants a team back because of the nostalgia, and I think that once the shininess of the new team wears off and fades, they're going to run into the same attendance problems that currently plague the A's and the Rays, and then they're going to be right back where they started with the team looking to get out and move somewhere else. Rinse, lather, repeat. Honestly, I'd love to see it. I really would, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's why the MLB has always been so hesitant to roll the dice on Montreal again. And even if they were to roll those dice, if it fails and the team, say, has to move 10, 20 years later, they're not going to roll those dice again. So it's really a 50-50 shot on that one. And if it pays off, then cool. If it fails, you're not getting a team there again. I think that it stands a slightly better shot than Oakland does. Like Oakland, once the A's leave for Vegas, Oakland is never getting another professional sports team. They're just not. Like, yeah, they've got the Oakland roots of the USL Championship, but I don't see Oakland getting a professional soccer team. And I certainly, I think that, they've the city of Oakland has pretty well burned its bridges with the Warriors, and vice versa. The A's, same thing. They've burned their bridges with the city of Oakland. The Raiders, they've moved to Vegas, and even though the Raiders are rooted in Oakland themselves, I just don't see the Raiders ever moving back. I just don't. If the Raiders ever move somewhere else, maybe they go to San Antonio, maybe the Rams move back to St. Louis, maybe, who knows, maybe the Raiders somehow, move to LA, but that's really unlikely. Point being, Oakland's not getting a is not getting a professional sports team ever again. Montreal might, but that's going to be a real big gamble, and if that goes south, it ain't going to happen again. So if they do get a team, again, tear down the Olympic Stadium, maybe build a brand new Olympic Stadium on the same site with a baseball team with a baseball stadium next door. They basically did that kind of with the tennis and soccer stadium that's in kind of around the same area. But make the baseball stadium preferably around 30 to 40K, just a little bit higher, expandable for standing room. Put in some social spaces, because that's kind of just, again, the theme of things these days. Some bars, some restaurants. I think it would make for a cool stadium mega project, honestly, if you did that, an Olympic stadium and a baseball stadium. It would likely cost a couple $2 billion, because I think if you packaged it as part of a revitalization effort, it would really pay off in the long run. Maybe build some hotels kind of in the area if you can. Even if you don't get a baseball team, though that still might be beneficial for the city of Montreal anyway, because then you could still host like the Olympics, the World Baseball Classic, FIFA World Cup matches, rugby, all that crap. Maybe then you'd be able to actually open Montreal's viability up, and then maybe it might do a little bit better. But as it stands right now, I just don't see a team really going back there. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, before you click off, I know this one seems a bit odd, but I've heard this one actually brought up a few times by other sports channels. I know that Albuquerque actually gets a lot of negative stereotypes because of like the drug problems, because of shows like Breaking Bad. They also aren't getting any help from the fact that they have one of the worst college football stadiums in the country, in my personal opinion. But they do have a great and unique minor league baseball team with an even more unique stadium. Albuquerque also has a USL Championship soccer team that plays there. And the team that they do have there for minor league baseball is the Albuquerque Isotopes of the AAA. The Isotopes, of course, named after the Springfield Isotopes from The Simpsons. New Mexico is also known for White Sands, where they tested nuclear weapons several decades ago. Los Alamos Laboratory is not too far away. The stadium, Isotopes Park, has statues of the Simpson family spread out throughout the park, so not only is it a great place to catch a game, but if you like The Simpsons, it's an extra special treat. Of course, the city is in the high desert, so you are going to get heat during the summer, but it's just not going to be nearly as brutal as, like, you'd say in neighboring Arizona or Texas. It's also very lovely in the summertime, very lovely in the springtime, so it does get a little bit cold in October. So playoff and even World Series games, that if they were to be held there, Could potentially just get a little bit frosty. But otherwise, good weather. You probably wouldn't even need a roof. You could upgrade and renovate Isotopes Park. I say keep the team name, the Isotopes. Boy, I'm saying Isotopes a lot. But it's unique. The people like it. It's representative of New Mexico's nuclear past. Maybe you could come up with some type of reference to the Roswell crash or aliens. But to be honest, I'd say if they get a team in Albuquerque, keep the Isotopes name. Maybe have the minor league team be in Roswell, maybe like a double or single A team. And then you could just do that. Call them the Roswell Aliens or something. Or the Roswell Crash or something. Again, social spaces for a stadium like that, for Albuquerque, you'd probably only need about 30K. Expandable to about 35K for standing room, playoffs, World Series. Maybe a small entertainment area. Do I honestly think that they'll ever actually get an MLB team there in Albuquerque? Initially I was going to say no, but I would say maybe one day. Not in the current era, but Albuquerque is growing. It will probably continue to grow over the next coming years, probably coming decades. And with more and more teams that do seem to be, moving from the west further out east and stuff like that, particularly to the southwest, the south, some cases even the Midwest. I think there could be a viable market for it at some point. So especially when, as more of those teams actually continue to shuffle around and stuff like that. Before we go, a couple honorable mentions here. I'm going to go with Sacramento for the first one. They already have the River Cats of AAA ball. Rayleigh Field could do for an upgrade. Maybe renovate that, expand the seating, make it more viable for the MLB. I know that the San Francisco Giants have played a few exhibition games there against their AAA squad, and it seemed to be a big hit. I've actually been to a game there. I had a great time, very intimate, great experience. Food was meh, but the beer was ice cold and was wonderful. The view of downtown and the Tower Bridge is also a nice touch. I doubt that they'll get an MLB team there right now, but I think as things get more and more expensive and more people actually move from the Bay Area to surrounding communities further inland, like the Sacramento Valley, like the Sierra Nevadas, the San Joaquin Valley, I think that we're going to start to see Sacramento expand and grow, and hopefully for the better. So yeah. I say keep the River Cats name if you do that. It works. The people love it. Rayleigh Field is right on the Sacramento River. There are a lot of catfish in the river.
Hi, I'm Neve.
Maybe you could go for the Senators or the Grizzlies/Bears, maybe the Capitals to represent Sac's ties as California's capital, or references to the Bear flag. You'll definitely, again, want social spaces. That's just a thing. Especially right there on the water and so close to downtown, you're definitely going to want that. Old Town Sacramento, or Old Sac as we call it back home, is right across the river from the current ballpark, and you've got so many great places that are over there. You've got Evangeline's costume and gift shop that's there. Stage 9 is literally just this huge nerd shop that can fulfill whatever basically fandom that tickles your fancy. They've got a bunch of nice restaurants and bars, a nice pizza place. They've got an Irish pub, a Mexican restaurant. They've got the Railroad Museum. And then, of course, they've got Joe's Crab Shack. Oh my God, I love Joe's Crab Shack. Every time I go home, I have to make a stop at Joe's. I have to go into Evangeline's. I have to go in to Stage 9. I just love all that area just so much. It's very near and dear to my heart. And there's just a lot to do. Oh, and if you're a true crime fan like I am, which might be my next inspiration for another channel, there is the Dorothea Puente house that is just actually a few blocks away from the Capitol. So, yeah, in case you're not familiar with that individual, Dorothea Puente was a older woman at the time in her 60s who poisoned and murdered 9 of her boarders, all of which either were elderly or had some mental disabilities or were homeless and stuff like that. And basically, yeah, murdered them, buried their bodies in the backyard, and cashed their welfare checks. So, yeah, so if you're into true crime and shit like that, that's something that you can at least go pass by. You can't actually, like, go in there. It's a private residence, but you can take pictures and stuff like that. In fact, the owners actually encourage you to take pictures from the street and everything. They literally have a mannequin in the likeness of Puente on the front porch. It's great. Also, please, if you go down there, go to Phil's Coffee and catch yourself a show from a local band at Ace of Spades. If you're in town, the coffee is a NorCal staple, and it's great, and the bands are absolutely bitchin'. But that's going to do it for this one, guys. Again, teams are moving to the Southwest and the Midwest and to the South. And it used to be that they were looking for greener pastures out west, but now that California dream is, well, kind of becoming a nightmare. It's expensive. The homeless and crime problems are just making things a lot more rough and harder. Cities are just not like they used to be. That's why some teams and leagues are actually looking to places like Vegas, Salt Lake City, Portland, Nashville, Charlotte. So those are just a few potential cities that could get relocation or expansion franchises. Also, with the decline of sports viability in Phoenix, last time I talked about the Coyotes potentially leaving the desert and Vegas becoming more of a popular sports destination. Maybe we might end up seeing the Diamondbacks leaving Arizona. Maybe they go to Salt Lake. Maybe they go to Portland. To be closer maybe to some of their minor league teams that are up that way. Maybe the Rays Stadium proposal falls through like the A's ones did at Howard Terminal, and maybe they have to move to Nashville. Or maybe all these cities just end up being expansion cities. Maybe some of them are just pipe dreams. But you know what? The possibilities are endless. Honestly, if I have to make my favorite picks for cities to get a team, Nashville and Portland. Obviously the latter one because I just would love to have a team here, and I'm a bit biased, and yeah. But my most likely cities to get a team, though, is definitely going to be Nashville. I think Nashville's a shoo-in. It's going to happen. I would definitely say Portland would be followed up by that, then Salt Lake City. I'm only putting Charlotte on the back burner because SLC, below SLC, because I think it has the potential to grow. But I think that the MLB is going to look at markets that don't have like a shit ton of like sports there. Like Charlotte's already got NFL, NBA, NHL. It's got soccer. And while the MLB would be a good, final like piece of the puzzle, the MLB is trying to kind of find markets that don't have all of that. They are looking to kind of expand to other cities that, well, you might not even give a second thought about, or even a first thought about. Like I said, Nashville has the Titans, they have the Predators, the Grizzlies are out in Memphis, so baseball definitely has a potential to move to Nashville. Portland just has soccer and basketball. They might get an NHL team if they press for it. They definitely have a viability for it, and the support for that Western Hockey League team is, fantastic. And not only that, they've already got a pre-approved site for baseball. So, plus with known names like Ciara and Russell Wilson that are backing the Portland Diamond Project, baseball is coming to Portland come hell or high water. There's just no getting around it. You may not like it, but it's going to happen. It's going to literally just drag you kicking and screaming. Boy, that kind of sounds dark. Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City has soccer and basketball,
And with a bid for an MLB team, the MLB will at least be paying some attention to them. Baseball will come to Salt Lake City at some point in the next couple of decades. I'm almost sure of it, either by relocation or expansion. Whereas Charlotte, they already have everything but a baseball team, and the MLB might, and while that might seem like that would be an easy decision, easy money right there, that actually might work against Charlotte right at the moment. Charlotte might kind of be pushed to the bottom of the barrel for that, because they're not going to see the city as, a priority to put a team there if they've already got other sports there. Whereas in cities like Portland and cities like Salt Lake City, Austin maybe, even Nashville, they're going to be looking to, kind of try to build on that. They're going to be trying to, get in there before anybody else does. They can't really do that with Charlotte because everyone else has already beaten them to the punch. So, yeah, I feel the league wants to expand to those cities that, again, you don't really ever give much of a thought to, that doesn't have every sport. And yeah, it's looking for those underdog cities, as I like to call them, especially in an age where downsizing in favor of social spaces and supporting local economies continues to become the norm. And with that said, I'm Red Pagan Nicole, and this has been Red Pagan Sports. Until next time.